Okay, so yes, this is a reminder that we are recording this and we'll post this online. On the agenda today, we have Philippe with an update on HR time. I'm going to give basically talk a bit about sign exchanges, portals, and what are their implications on the various APIs that we're working on. And then we'll talk a bit about the agenda for TPAC. But first, is there anyone that can volunteer to start scribing?
Computer is a little bit slow, so.
Yo, I can do it.
Sure, but I suspect that for the sign exchange discussion, you'll have a lot to say. So yeah, as well as for the TPIC agenda. So maybe, I don't know, Stephen, do you feel like scribing today, maybe?
Yeah, I can try. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know too much the context about sign exchange. That's why I was kind of like, I'll try my best.
That's fine. And worst case, we have the video to fall back on if we need to complete stuff. So yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Ian.
Okay, and Philippe, do you want to kick off the HR time update?
Yeah, so in the previous episode, I think I left it to Ralph is about to make a decision, and we should expect it in the next few days. Unfortunately, things went south after that, where basically Ralph actually wanted to talk to Tim Bell after that, which produced a significant delay because Tim Bell was was away for a while. That meeting happened a week and a half ago, something like that, maybe a week ago, a bit over beginning of last week. And Tim came with a proposal, which I am not going to go there in details today, mainly because before we ask anything from the WebPerf working group, Ralph would like to make sure that that it would actually help. And I'm aware that he has a meeting later today with one of the privacy co-chair to talk about it. If it helps, what he would like to do is to stop by the face-to-face meeting on Tuesday after the morning break to talk about it. If it doesn't help, then well, we'll get a decision faster because we're going to have to basically move forward.
Hey, Philippe, sorry, a decision on what?
High resolution time too.
So for a bit of context, we had a discussion with the privacy folks. I think we talked about that issue on the calls. There were a couple of issues that they raised, and we concluded were not very actionable, and therefore ended up closing them. And they basically, I don't know if they raised a formal objection, but they basically objected to the spec moving to rec based on that. And we had various discussions with Rolf and other W3C folks related to that. So this is, so the conclusion is that we may have a meeting with Ralph or with Timble. I don't like
Ralph. It would be on the Tuesday morning at TPAC after morning break. I should be able to confirm that by the end of the day today.
Okay.
And what I will do is I will add that to the agenda page.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
So sorry that it's taking so long. And it's making slow progress, and we still don't have a decisions, but it's moving.
Okay. Okay, and with that, let's move on to talk about sign exchanges, portals, bundles, and implications on WebPerf APIs. Let me try to present. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, great. So this is something we actually wanted to talk about, like at the face-to-face, and been postponing it ever since. But there are various loading related primitives that are that Chrome is working on and have shipped some of them and planning to ship others at some point. And there's still no consensus from other vendors regarding them. But at the same time, we'd like to discuss some of their implications for the web, like for WebPerf APIs, and see what this group should do about that, about those upcoming loading primitives. So first of all, so sign exchanges. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the concept, but it's a way to decouple the actual transport origin from the security guarantees, and make it so that a resource that originated from A.com can be signed by A.com and then later on served from B.com, where the browser will treat it as if it came from the original origin, so from A.com. So it decouples the transport origin from the origin concept in a way. So it creates certificate-based origins. The content's origin is cryptographically verified through the certificate, and it provides us authenticity and integrity. So the browser can know that the content arrived from that origin and can know that it wasn't tampered with, but it doesn't provide confidentiality from the serving server. So in the previous scenario, B.com will know which resources from A.com were downloaded by the user. But because the connection from B.com is all to the user is also over TLS, MITMing on the wire will not know anything more than they do today. And sign exchanges enable us to serve secure context signed content from any arbitrary server, and the browser treats that as an internal redirect from the B.com URL to the A.com URL. And we have multiple use cases for that. The major one is for privacy preserving prefetch. So being able to prefetch resources without revealing the identity of the user to the origin, because the user has not done any, like, hasn't yet expressed interest in accessing the information on A.com, but we want it to be, like, we want the user to have that information ahead of time anyway. So sign exchanges enable the browser or enable services to prefetch that content from trusted servers without revealing that prefetch to the original origin. It also enables offline PWA installs, so enables users to download from each other, so share content among users, while still maintaining the origin concept, and enable various offline caches, even though that use case, like, there are still some problems with that when it comes to discovery. I also have some thoughts on how sign exchanges can help us deliver origin policies in a timely manner. So have origin policies that arrive before the content is actually requested. Yeah, we can expand more on the various use cases if you're interested at a side conversation at TPAC. But for now, I think that the main implication of sign exchanges for our WebPerf APIs is that it includes some extra steps when downloading the resource. So once the sign exchange was downloaded, the browser needs to verify its it needs to download and verify its certificate chain. So that adds potentially an extra hop that needs to be accounted for as part of our resource timing diagram. Where do we actually add that? And otherwise, content that is served from sign exchanges can have significantly different performance characteristics. And beyond that, it can have different performance characteristics depending on the distributor that delivered the sign exchange. And then the open question are, do we want to expose that the content was served from a sign exchange? And if so, can we expose from a security perspective which distributor was the one that served the content? And that is still under active discussion on the sign exchange side of things. Any questions?
You've listed the issue on navigation timing. I assume all the same issues apply to resource timing.
So theoretically, although now we mainly talk about sign exchanges as means to deliver navigation responses. And then for resource timing, we'll talk about resource timing more when we're talking about bundled exchanges, where bundled exchanges expand the concept of sign exchanges to bundle more than just a navigation resource and include sub-resources as well.
Is that because of how sign exchanges are being used, or actually implemented and used? Because sign exchange as a generic concept, as you've explained it, is just a when it applies to resources.
That is true, and it's true that we could also have sign exchanges, like theoretically, we could have sign exchanges applied to sub-resources and then have, for example, CDNs serve them from, served signed resources from the origin and on the main H2 connection rather than, having the browser connect to a separate host. So yes, theoretically, those same issues apply to resource timing as well.
Okay, it's just that no implementation or proposal is implementing sign exchanges beyond navigations right now.
Yes, that is correct.
I believe technically, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, it would work if you have, like, if you want to take a resource and have a now, nothing stops you from having a sub-resource that is a sign exchange. It's just that it's not a use case that we've actually seen anyone try so far. It's primarily for the navigation.
I am not, I'm not sure what's the implementation status on that. It should be feasible, but I'm not sure what the implementation status in Chromium for that.
Okay, and the reason I'm asking is just it feels to me like this should be fixed in resource timing, not in navigation timing, given that navigation timing then depends on resource timing, and this is a resource related issue. Super nitpick. You'll do the right thing. It's fine.
It's also, since this is most probably an L3 issue, and by L3 we should coalesce them. It doesn't really matter, but I agree that, yeah.
Also, just a couple of quick notes. So issue 107, I've tried to document some of the background discussions and a proposal for how we could attempt this problem. I also want to unpack a couple of distinct questions and that you have highlighted here. I think the non-controversial bit is exposing that something was served from an SXG. At least I've not heard much pushback on that. We do need to distinguish the fact that something was served through this format. And for that, something as simple as surfacing a new timestamp in our timeline that says a validation happened would signal that. Effectively, you'd look for that and say, if that's a non-zero value, there's a non-zero delta there, I know that it came, like there was a set of steps that happened for validating the SXG. And the actual validation could actually be significant, because if, for example, you're fetching a resource, signed resource for an origin that you've never visited, the browser would have to basically hit the brakes, fetch the cert, validate all that, and then proceed. And then it can cache the cert, and on future navigations be much faster, but still, like that would be a pretty significant delay potentially. The bit that's undefined right now and that we're still trying to figure out is, are we and what are we allowed to expose about the specific distributor? So one could imagine that I, as a provider of content in this new world of SXGs, my content maybe was distributed by multiple distributors, and I want to know what are the performance characteristics of each one, because it's not a given, for example, that it's always better. There's some caveats there in terms of privacy and security, so that we're still working through with the folks working on SXG. But as a first step, I think we should, as a group, consider defining validation start. I agree it's a level 3 feature, and then kind of in parallel try to nudge the discussion on what distributors, what can we expose about the actual distributors.
Thanks for bringing up 107. From what I can tell, that's been paused while web packaging figures out next steps. Is that correct?
Ish, yeah. So I think what I'm actually getting at is that issue captures everything that you have described here, but it probably makes sense to unbundle the non-controversial bit, which is the validation timestamp, from the more granular which distributor this package came from.
Okay, and so you're saying that all we need to do to note that the resource comes from a signed exchange is provide some timing information on validation of certificate. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah. So similar. So currently, if you think about our timeline in resource timing, for example, if you want to know if HTTPS was HTTPS negotiated, you could look at the delta between a request start, like TCP connection end, and if there was time delay between that and HTTPS end of HTTPS negotiation, you can infer that some HTTPS negotiation happened and what the overhead of that was. So in the same vein, we would add as kind of an in-between step there to say a validation happened, which is effectively like you're loading from an SXG.
Yeah, I mean, I for sure like having some kind of certificate validation explicitly marked in resource timing or navigation timing, however we're parsing that. That's essential. But also I want to just like call out that Chrome DevTools have this new idea of an internal redirect. And so that actually takes place way before this, right before certificate validation. I would love to see some thinking about a new type of redirect or internal redirect, whatever we're going to call it. I would really like to see that kind of exposed as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. So we reference internal redirect in the slide here, but that's an unspecified concept that we just used in Chrome. I'm not sure if other browsers have a similar definition.
Yeah, well, we don't. But I think it's telling that you've decided to expose this in the Chrome implementation because there's clearly a use and a need for this, right? So that developers can tell what's going on. And I think it's clearly going to be needed there.
How do you? So Benjamin, do you know how you implement HSTS?
No, I was a little confused about those references in 107. Maybe we could do a background explainer at TPAC for that.
Okay.
Sure.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so I think actually to echo what Yo was hinting at, one of the first use cases and the major use cases for internal redirect in Chrome is HSTS, where effectively we look at the URL, we look at the policy, if there's a HSTS policy, and we rewrite it on the fly to HTTPS before the request goes out. So we treat that as an internal redirect, effectively, or we model it as an internal redirect in our net stack.
Yeah, I'd like to bring out this idea of internal redirect and try to standardize it and make it a cross-vendor.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
for what it's worth, just to kind of add a little bit of more value to that, we have seen cases where those internal redirects can take quite a bit of time.
Yes, I mean, we've seen cases where certificate validation can take a lot of time, i.e. safe browsing. So that's why, for sure, we want a certificate part of this explicitly noted in resource timing. But I think because you're talking about maybe some sign exchanges have different performance characteristics amongst themselves, regardless of the originating site. So, I mean, yeah, we definitely want to have that noted too.
Yep, makes sense.
Cool. Thanks.
I would point out that HSTS in WebWiki is implemented by CF Network Library, and the other platforms that we use implement by other libraries. And the sign exchange presumably won't be implemented at the layers. So if using the same mechanism, that might pose a sort of implementation challenge for us, as we may not be able to use this mechanism.
Okay.
This whole idea of transport origin and certificate-based origin, these seem to be new terminologies. Or am I wrong? Or is this referenced? Is this starting to be a development of new terminology about origins? Or am I missing something? Is this a term of art that's been previous?
It is terminology.
It is new terminology?
Yes.
Okay. And those are defined precisely where?
So Jeffrey Askin has done amazing work at
that's the IETF stuff.
So it's WICG repo at the moment. There have been ongoing debates at the IETF regarding what is the ideal venue. It's probably going to go for a BOF to determine whether an IETF working group will be created to define all those concepts in Singapore in a couple of months. It currently lives under WICG/web packaging.
Yeah. Okay. That seems fundamentally like a very big conceptual break with stuff that has happened before and the kind of insistence on single origins. So I think that precisely determining that is of great importance for sign exchange proposal.
Yep.
Obviously, yes. Okay, so shall we move on to bundles? Okay,
I guess, wait, I have one other kind of question in general about sign exchanges.
Okay.
You're talking about one of the main use cases as wanting to hide a resource fetch from the origin?
Yes.
And why?
So this is
Explain on that.
not a resource fetch, but a resource prefetch. So prefetching resources before the user has shown interest in them. Let's say you are on site A that includes links to site B, C, and D. The user hasn't yet done anything, but site A wants to prefetch those navigation resources for B, C, and D in order to make them faster once the user will eventually click on them.
And that's A's shown that intent with the use of the prefetch element?
Yes. So
or preload, one of those two.
Prefetch. So this is a prefetch case where site A will prefetch those resources, but at the same time, if it prefetches them from B, C, and D, they can know things about the user that the user hasn't yet shown intent for them to know about it.
Yes.
So that sounds very convoluted.
One very concrete use case this is Google search, right? So in a search use case, a user conducts a search. They're searching for something sensitive. We provide a set of potential results, and we'd like to optimize the experience for the user and potentially start prefetching some of that. If you do that in an existing model today, it requires that we go and prefetch from the origin, which leaks intent and information about the user without the user actually ever explicitly clicking on a link. So this is actually being used by the AMP team today. On their AMP blog, you can read about their experience and their requirements around that. So that's a strict kind of privacy requirement from Google search that exists today. And signed exchanges is one of the building blocks that enables any content to be served in that way. So the way that works is there's a trusted distributor which does not leak that data to the actual origin. So we can prefetch the signed exchange from, let's say, a Google CDN, deliver better user experience without actually leaking to the origin until the user clicks on that link.
It seems like a lot of implementation to find, and there's like a lot of confusion between what implementators are optimizing for and what actually users are asking for. Like the user didn't ask for that prefetch in the Google search scenario you sketched. Is there a way to, you know what I mean? Like that's not the user's problem. That's like the vendor's problem for being aggressive at prefetching. That is where these privacy implications are coming in.
The performance is the user's problem.
Say again, please.
Performance is the user's problem eventually. So if we want to be able to prefetch across origins without revealing information about what the user was doing on other sites, that will that kind of prefetch is by definition revealing basically if we want to do that kind of cross-origin prefetch in a private way, we need something like signed exchanges as a primitive that will enable us to do that.
So is there a way for a user who's concerned about privacy to turn off prefetching on that vendor site?
I think that's a product/signed exchange question. So Ben, I think these are really good questions. I'm not sure that we're actually the best people and most equipped to answer them. I would say that let's defer that discussion to the signed exchange, to the folks working on signed exchange.
Sure.
And there'll be a TPAC, so we can definitely have a meeting there to talk about signed exchanges and background and whatnot. Okay?
Okay, that sounds great.
Said another way, it's possible from fetch to start cross-origin requests from JavaScript. So this is not a new privacy leak on the web, right? cross-origin requests are a thing.
It's not a new privacy leak, but in the concept of, it's not a new privacy leak.
Right. I'm just being clear about that, just for kind of clarity. Even though I'm not the expert, cross-origin requests have been a thing on the web for many, many years.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Right. Okay.
But we want to make them less privacy invasive, and this is one of the primitives to do that.
Right. And if I understand, what it will do is it will change the request from a full URL to effectively a certificate request, which reduces the amount of information that is leaked from the site that is doing these.
Yes.
Chooses to switch to the site exchanges. Is that accurate?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and also the certificate URL can also be served from trusted servers and not necessarily from the origin. So you need the full certificate change, but the full certificate chain, but you don't need it delivered from the origin.
Okay.
Okay. And on that note, let's move on to bundles. So bundled exchanges is a concept that was initially tangled up with the sign exchanges as web packaging and was since split. And it enables various, basically, it's very similar to multi-part based, resource bundles, only that it's not awful. There are various use cases for that in the in the context of privacy preserving prefetch. They enable that kind of prefetch for sub-resources. We are also talking about them as a way to serve ES modules in a way that is more performant than the way ES modules are being served today, and potentially enable full PWAs in app stores, where if you also include sign exchanges in that story, that will enable you to have those PWAs bound to the original origin, but served as a single resource from app stores or local servers or whatnot. And as far as WebPerf APIs are concerned, we have resource timing. So Todd was correct to state that resource timing can be served as an explicit sign exchange, but if they are served from a bundle, that is again gives us different performance characteristics, and probably something that we want to add a flag for, so that analytics vendors can tell when a resource was served from a bundle versus not. And then potentially, so we wrote here like time waited for bundle to download, but bundles are basically progressively parsed. So it's not necessarily the start end times of the full bundle, but maybe we need start end times of the resource inside the bundle, which makes the definition a bit more, like basically we're introducing the parsing overhead of the bundle as something that will impact the start and end time of the single resource.
Sorry, a couple quick questions. So are bundles in a format that would allow range requests and therefore partial downloads, or are you speaking of client-side bundle parsing?
I'm speaking of client-side bundle parsing. The concept of range request has come up. Theoretically they are, but also theoretically you can get a lot of benefits from compressing the entire bundle as a single resource, and then all bets are off as far as range requests are concerned.
Okay, so it would be possible that the final bundle format allows a request to foo.js, and the server is like, yo, I got a bundle that has foo.js in it, and the server chooses to respond with a bundle that's foo bar and henry.js.
Or
then,
let's consider a different scenario. So you have a navigation request for foo.html that includes foo.js and foo.css in it as a bundle. So the server is serving all of that as a single signed bundle.
Yep.
And then the browser starts receiving the content. It starts receiving the bundle, but initially it only has the content for foo.html. So that it marks the points of start and end time for foo.html at that point. And then it starts receiving the content for foo.js inside that very same bundle. So then it should mark that start and end times at that point. And we're mixing download times and parsing times here to some extent. If we really want to represent to have an equivalent of the timestamps that we have today.
Yes. Okay, that makes sense. That's by the way, the simple top-down bundle. That's why I was actually asking about the corner case, which was let's imagine I ask for a subset of a bundle. Can a server then also respond with a bundle when you ask for a resource, or is that not part of bundles?
So if you're if the browser is requesting a subset of a bundle, presumably it has the rest of the bundle. I'm not sure if a bundle can be parsed from, without its full context. So if I just give you the resource that's inside the bundle, I'm not sure.
Okay.
But
I'm just asking so I can understand the web bundle spec more clearly.
Yeah, and it's worthwhile to, again, talk about that with Jeffrey if you have a specific download scenario in mind. Jeffrey asked me, and we can, I'll arrange a...
So if it downloads a full bundle, and that bundle is organized in such a way that the first file is at the beginning, the original, let's say, on a navigation request, the HTML, then effectively the moment that HTML gets enough bytes to become parsable, is when the response the response start of the HTML starts at the bundle start. Yeah, it's strange, right? Because it doesn't quite fit the model.
Yeah, it will require some adaptation if we want to maintain the same granularity that we have today.
So if there's a bundle and we consider, hey, we're just going to expose the bundle, that would expose one piece of information, but what it would hide is the sub bits of client parsing and the possible slowness if there's a streaming server building this thing on the fly in the various responses.
Yeah.
Do you think that sub information is needed? I don't know if there's any website developers here who've considered using it, but
so I don't think so. Server-side slowness from building on the fly, I don't think that the current format supports that because it also includes a map of all resources at the top of the bundle. So you can't build on the fly, you can remove stuff on the fly. So you can subset a bundle, but you cannot build a bundle. But I think that if you are to, if we don't expose the start and end times, we will basically, we have a monolithic bundle that is being, different resources are being pulled out of it as it's being parsed, and that will hide all that information. Basically, the bundle start will be too soon. Like if we expose bundle start instead of actual resource parsing start, that will not anyone wants to know why didn't JavaScript processing happen right away, because you still have to download and process the HTML, but you don't consider that in your timestamps.
So today, response start, sometime between response start and response end is when parsing start, we assume, begins. And therefore, you're saying that website analytics folks rely on that today as part of reasoning about the performance of web pages.
Yeah, I suspect that if we don't give those granular points in time, then the start and stop times for all the resource on the page will be the same start and stop time, which doesn't give you any useful information. If all resources on the page were delivered by a single bundle.
Well, it's sort of like inlining all your scripts in HTML. It's the same lack of information.
Sure, but you're missing information if you're inlining all your scripts into your HTML.
Right. By the way, I'm not actually saying I don't want to expose it. I'm just asking if it's a necessary, like, does it need to exist with when the, like, how urgent is it, is the core question. I don't know if Nick's on the call, I see, if he's thought about it at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think our customers would want to know breakdowns of this kind of data whenever they can get it. I mean, once you start removing the ability to know which particular resources are larger or bigger, or came with the bundle or didn't, or it's all necessary stuff to have, I think.
Because today, parse time is a thing you can't know. Parse time for JavaScript starts on a background thread, and it can start as the response is streaming in the middle of the response stream. But it is interesting that we will lose information to this. But again, I would love to have all this information if I was a website developer, because I'm crazy like this. I'm just playing devil's advocate for a moment on whether it's needed.
I think to the extreme, it's as needed as resource timing is needed. Because at the extreme, if you delivered everything in a single bundle, that will basically mean that all your resource timing information just tells you the start of the website and the end of the website download, and nothing more than that.
And if you have a bloated bundle, you can't tell that you basically slowed down a script because it was the last thing in the bundle somehow in the package.
Yes, and also if you misordered your bundle,
right,
you can have the same size bundle but in the wrong order, and that can cause slowness, and you won't be able to know because you won't have those timestamps. So
got it.
I think this is something we need to think about when. Yep. So bundles are not yet shipping, but it's something that we'll need to think about at some point.
Do you think that the idea of parse start is a bundles only thing, or do you think it's a thing that should be added universally?
So I don't think that the point here is not exposing the parse time. I think we should talk about exposing parse time separately for resource timing. But here, the point is not the parse time of the JavaScript, but the parse time of the external bundle that revealed here is the start and here is the end of the JavaScript. And here is the start and here is the end of the CSS. So just the parse time that it took for to parse the bundle in order to discover the resources themselves. If that makes sense.
Would there be any information about resources that weren't needed for whatever reason on the page in the bundle or something, or so you can understand what percentage of the bundle was used?
So resources that are inside the bundle but aren't used by the page, I think by default in today's parsing model, they won't be exposed.
Would the resource timing entry also exist for an entry that was in a bundle? So, you go to foo.js in a script tag, and it happens to have been served in the bundle. Would that have a separate resource timing entry?
I believe, It should be, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
yeah.
So these are all the questions being asked.
Folks, a quick time check. We have 10 minutes. We probably should talk about TPAC a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah, and we'll talk about portals some other time, but yeah, somewhat similar implications. So let me switch what I'm sharing to the TPAC Scratchpad. A minute. Okay. So. Okay. So we have the agenda doc for TPAC. We have an agenda scratchpad with a bunch of ideas. What we thought in broad, like the broad lines we thought about is to have design discussions on Monday, and then talk more about issues and try to make some high bandwidth progress on controversial issues on Tuesday. I still need to review all the current issues and tag the ones that require more discussions versus the ones that are just work. But when it comes to, yeah, and HR time as well on Tuesday. But when it comes to design discussions, do folks here on the call have anything else that they would like to discuss that isn't currently already on the Scratchpad?
Is there any way that you can provide largest contentful paint, kind of like the summary of the things we've learned so far and/or details on them? It doesn't have to be at TPAC, but we're interested in learning more about the implementation experience gained.
I think we can definitely do that.
Also, you have, I think last time we talked about all the APIs available today works for one page, but when we have a web application with, soft navigation,
yes,
all those APIs becomes unusable. Is that part of the agenda?
Yeah. So we have SPA monitoring, and I think this will be part of that. I think this is a discussion that will benefit from, like, maybe we should block a couple of hours even to just talk about that and make some progress on the design for that. There are also various discussions about the history API, and I've heard people that talk about maybe wanting to reset the history API or create a better alternative one. And maybe this is a discussion that, like, on the one hand, I don't want to derail that discussion or to block it on history API revamping, but at the same time, a new API can provide us with ways or hooks that we can use in order to make sure that we can heuristically know when soft navigations are happening better than we can today.
Yeah. Another one that that popped up recently is work on compress string. I'm curious to, so the context here is exposing an API to compress data on the client without shipping your own compressor, which many RUM providers do today. That's being incubated by a Chrome team actually out in Tokyo. Is there interest in the group in having them come out and talk about the use cases, engaging with the group?
Nate, I know that you, like, Andrew worked on something similar, so it would be good to do that kind of coordination, I think.
Yeah, I agree. We've actually already talked to that team, and I think we're going to join efforts here. But yeah, I think they were hoping to come out and talk about it already.
Okay. And I think I saw Ben and Todd nod as well. So it sounds like something we should try and schedule.
Yeah. I mean, Andrew was hoping to talk about compression streams at TPAC.
Okay. All right. So we'll add that to the agenda. For is input pending? Do we have particular themes or?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I added that there. The goal, I think, mostly is just to see, like, is there consensus around like moving the spec from WICG into WebPerf and kind of like publishing the spec.
Okay.
Okay, so less of a design discussion and more of a issue, like administrative discussion, right?
I think so, unless like other folks have design things they want to bring up for it, but.
We've been experimenting with it, so I could talk briefly about that too.
So if we reserve, let's say, half an hour to do a quick recap, learnings, would that be enough for is input pending?
I think so, yeah. I don't think it needs a ton of time if there's nothing big.
Okay, great.
Main thing there is just, do we move it into WebPerf?
I also saw the intent to, I think, experiment or implement on is render pending? I don't remember the specific API. Is that something that should be shared, or is it still need a little time before we know more?
I can talk. I think it's Stefan Zager who is running that incubation. I can talk to him and see if it's worth discussing.
Okay. And then could you put a note on frame timing? Noam's in Israel, and we'll be dialing in for that discussion. So we'll want to schedule that late in Japan to get Israel.
Okay. Cool.
Is there a particular day? Is Monday fine, Todd? Do you know?
I believe he can make either day work as long as it's late in the day.
Okay. Good.
Speaking of which, what time of the day are you guys starting to start? I think it's on the schedule. It's 8:30, like the generic schedule for TPAC. Is that realistic, or I just want to know what time I have to get up? You know.
We've always historically started on time and run the entire duration.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, 8:30 is basically midnight. Like, yeah.
It's going to be 1:30. Yeah.
1:30.
I'll try to sleep before.
Yeah.
Make it work.
Okay. Sorry about the round planet.
You gotta fix that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do it on Mars next time. It's smaller.
Okay. Any other topics that we're missing here and we need to discuss?
This feels like a pretty robust set of topics already.
Yeah.
I guess we'll just have to play some Tetris with the scheduling and then figure out how to.
Yeah, and as far as the issues go, we can also see because, we'll see how much we have for issue-related discussions, and maybe we can eat up half a day, like, do a day and a half for design and then half a day for issues if we see that it's.
Favor in-person throughput issues or people who just want to get an hour of work and in-face code reviews. Those are the two valuable things.
Yeah.
They're not code, but
time, yeah. At the same time, I think like maybe these are
Yep.
Not necessarily. It doesn't necessarily require the entire group. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and TPAC should really be prioritizing things where we're getting a large amount of cross-section and other people would not normally be around. So
Yeah.
I think prioritizing design makes a lot of sense.
Cool. Thank you. Okay, and with that, we're at time. So thank you all so much. Apologies for the time zone mix-ups, and I'll see y'all or most of you at TPAC.
Yeah. See you, folks. Thanks.